So, if there was a document which claimed that Jesus was like a star-spangled banner, we dig into how Jesus was like a star, and then like a banner, and then how a banner would be spangled by stars. But we'd also have to look at the national anthem of the United States. Star, banner, spangled aren't just words. They have cultural and historic significance. And so if we're going to claim that Jesus is like a star-spangled banner, we need to examine that significance, how those words evoke something beyond just themselves. When we look at the opening to the prologue of John, we need to do something similar. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This might be the most dramatic beginning to any book of the Bible, but as dramatic as it is, it's also vexing. In the beginning was the Word? What word? Which word? Any word? The word? The word here is obviously referring to something much larger and much different than what we normally think the word means. In Greek, the language the New Testament and the Gospel of John were written in, the word here is logos. In the beginning was the logos. In English, we find the derivatives of logos all over the place. Whenever you see fields of study labeled as geology, theology, sociology, and the like, the logi comes straight from logos. When we see it in words like dialogue and legend and logic and logistics. At its simplest, logos means word or words or reason or thinking. So psychology is words about the mind. Geology is words about rocks and minerals. Dialogue is the transfer of words between people. But that on its own doesn't really help us when it comes to in the beginning was the Word. To have any hope of figuring out what John is talking about here, we're going to have to do more than just look at English derivatives. We're going to have to look back in history. And our first stop will be somewhere around 600 years before John sat down to write his gospel, with the Greek philosopher who seems to be the first person to ever talk about a logos, Heraclitus of Ephesus. Heraclitus was insistent on there being a general and constant force of reason in the universe. When he looked at the sun, the moon, and the stars, and justice, peace, and beauty, he believed that there had to be something that held it all together. While I might look at the universe or the concept of beauty from one perspective, and you might look at the universe and beauty from a different perspective, there has to be an objective truth about it. It can't all just be opinions and perspectives. There has to be a right answer somewhere. There has to be one underlying truth that is objectively correct. Heraclitus calls this cosmological constant the logos. For Heraclitus, the logos wasn't a god per se. Living 500 years before Jesus and in the Greek world, Heraclitus was steeped in polytheism and idol worship. He held it a given that there were many, many gods bumping into each other in the universe. But for Heraclitus, there had to be something that even governed the actions of the gods. There had to be a set of natural laws and truths that even a god had to obey. Heraclitus said that this underpinning to the cosmos would be the logos. The Logos provides order to the physical world, and in the non-physical world of thoughts and ideas, it provides order too in the form of truth. For Heraclitus, the Logos is the interpretive key to understanding all of reality. The only way to grasp the truth about anything is to tap into the Logos. Now, Heraclitus is only the first of the ancient thinkers to talk about a Logos, and we have another 500 years of development of this Logos concept to go before we get to John writing his gospel. But right now, we should probably already be getting a little closer to grasping that what John means when he says, "In the beginning was the Word." He's not talking about something from a dictionary. Now, not quite 200 years after Heraclitus introduced the world to the concept of the Logos, Plato began his world-changing intellectual pursuit. Plato saw the universe split into two realms, the realm of reality and the realm of becoming. The realm of becoming is where we are now. The world is becoming all around us. Storms are becoming. New technologies are becoming. We are becoming new people, growing people every day. But with this becoming is also decay and death and obsolescence. In the realm of becoming, things don't last forever. In fact, most things barely last long at all. But in the realm of reality, things never break down, get old, decay, or cease to exist. This realm is the spiritual realm where ideas exist. Famously, in the realm of reality, there are objects that are the perfect essences of their counterparts in this realm. The common example is that of the chair. This is a chair. So is this. And so is this too, right? All chairs, and all different, at least somewhat. But we can properly identify each of them as a chair and not a love seat or a stool. For Plato, this is because in the realm of reality, there is a perfect chair, the chair that perfectly captures the essence of chairness. The countless numbers of chairs in the realm of becoming are somehow echoes or shadows of that perfect essential chair. These chairs here get their chairness from that perfect chair. But how do these chairs in the physical realm participate in that celestial chair? Well, Plato has an answer for that. Can you guess what it is? It's the Logos, or at least a Logos. He says that each thing that exists in the cosmos has its own Logos, a sort of guiding principle through which it is able to receive essence from its archetypal form in the heavens. Thus, for Plato, the Logos is the rational and underlying intelligence of the universe. In some way, you could say it unites the universe as it forms a connective tissue between the two realms which define existence. In Plato's great work, the Timaeus, he writes, "As I see it then, we must begin by making the following distinction. What is that which always is and has no becoming? And what is that which always becomes but never is? The former is grasped by understanding, which involves a logos. It is unchanging. The latter is grasped by opinion, which involves a sensory logos. It comes to be and passes away, but never really is." You can see here the same aversion to opinion and perspectives as we found with Heraclitus, and an insistence on an unchanging grasp of what is really and actually true. Plato's ideas didn't die with him. They continued on, but they also continued to develop and grow. You could say that they continued to become. A couple hundred years after Plato, a new movement arose called Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism took the ideas of Plato and expanded on them, bringing them to bear on the world as it continues to change around them. Maybe the most famous ancient Neoplatonist of them all was Plotinus. Plotinus developed the concept of logos to refer to an expressed principle or undergirding reason. Similar, but not exactly identical to Plato. He says that there are two realms, a higher spiritual realm and a lower physical realm, and the logos is the little spark of the higher form as it's found in its lower form. So going back to the chair, the essence of the chair in the spiritual realm of reality, which participates in the chair that I can sit on here in the realm of becoming, that is the logos. Thus, the logos is everywhere. There's logos in this chair, and there's logos in the floor, and there's logos in my shirt, which means that for Plotinus, everywhere we look, there's little sparks, little connections to this higher realm. And we get to participate in that higher realm through the sparkling logos, which without the logos, we wouldn't be able to do. When Jesus proclaimed at the beginning of the Gospel of Mark, the kingdom of God has come near, every Neoplatonist for the previous 200 years would have completely agreed with him. The heavens were sparkling in everything around us and everything within us, they said. Plotinus never put it this way exactly, but I think you could look at Plotinus's philosophy and come away saying that for him, the Logos is the mediator between heaven and earth. Is John's prologue coming into more focus? I mean, it should be. In early 3rd century BC Athens, a new school of philosophical thought emerged called Stoicism. The Stoics were still around through the ministry of Jesus, and some Stoic teachers heard Paul preach on the Areopagus in Athens. In Acts chapter 17, when Paul is on the Areopagus, or Mars Hill, the place where the greatest philosophers of the day met to argue with each other and to learn from each other, he quotes two Greek philosophers. Paul says of God, "For in him we live and move and have our being." There he is quoting directly from the Epicurean philosopher Epimenides. Then Paul says, "For we are indeed his offspring," which is a quote from Aratus, a Stoic philosopher who was a student of Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. So it's clear that St. Paul was well aware of Stoicism. When the Stoics considered the cosmic order, they saw the whole thing held together by something they called the logos spermaticos. The Greek phrase logos spermaticos would eventually be rendered into Latin as anima mundi, the spirit of the world, meaning that living things, obviously have an animating spirit, but that there is also an animating spirit within inanimate objects. So for the Stoics, there's a spark of life, a spirit of life, which is the logos, which provides order and cohesion to the cosmos. And again, this logos is sparkling everywhere, giving some sort of spirit to everything that is around us. While Jesus was active in his ministry, preaching and teaching and healing and walking the way of the cross, there was a Jewish philosopher living and working in Alexandria, Egypt, whose name was Philo. As a fellow Jew living concurrently with Jesus in the Mediterranean basin, Philo was also a monotheist, which made him stand out in the crowded field of pagan philosophers. Philo believed spiritually and intellectually in the God of the Old Testament, the God of his people, Israel. However, Philo's understanding of God is probably a lot different than our understanding of God. As Christians, we've been steeped in the understanding of God that we find in the teachings of Jesus, like the Father in the story of the prodigal son. We are probably inclined to see a God who is close to us, loves us, knows us individually, and is active in our life. However, this is not the way that Philo understood God. And I have to say, he wasn't alone in his understanding, as we will continue to see in the next session. He believed that for God to be God, God must be immutable, unable to change, unable to reach down into human history on his own and interact with the created order. For God to be eternal and unchangeable, God must be removed from us. Think about it. If we were to pray for God to do something, and God did it, God answered our prayers, then that would mean that we changed God's mind. We altered God's course. The world was going to go in this direction, and then we asked God to intervene, and God did intervene. This is an image of a God who loves us and who hears our prayers, but it's not an image of an immutable and unchangeable God. If you think about it, it's kind of familiar. A realm where God dwells in a spiritual state of perfection without any becoming, and another realm below that is merely a decaying shadow of what is above. It's Platonism, or at least it's Neoplatonism. In fact, Philo was the first of the Neoplatonists to determine that the realm of being with the eternal forms was really just the realm of God's thoughts. Those eternal forms emanated from the divine mind in their perfection. And so, as a good Neoplatonist, Philo would be completely unwilling to say that God left humanity and all of creation out in the dark. I mean, how would Philo ever explain the burning bush and the Exodus and the walls of Jericho that came a-tumbling down? There would have to be some mechanism for God's realm to interact with ours, even if it didn't do so directly. Philo's answer for this is the Logos. For Philo, the Logos is the mediator between God and the created order. Since God can't interact directly with creation, because that would damage his immutability, God has the Logos do that for him. Philo wrote this around the same time that Jesus was engaged in his ministry. The Logos of the living God is the bond of everything, holding all things together and binding all the parts, and prevents them from being dissolved and separated. So when John sat down to write his gospel, he didn't just invent this idea of a Logos, a word out of thin air. John was using a term that was well known, at least in intellectual circles, for the previous 600 years. The philosophical and academic understanding of the Logos had a rich history and a fascinating development. It wasn't limited to the ideas of one philosopher or even one philosophical system. It had a universal characteristic about it, with each philosophical school taking a different nuanced view of what the Logos was. John would have certainly been drawing on that tradition, and he would also be contributing to it. Now, when you hear these words from John's prologue, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us." Now what do you hear? What is John saying? Where is John drawing on the prior traditions of the Logos? And where is John breaking new ground? How might this add to our understanding of this prologue in general and of Jesus in particular?